Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a really complex story. It's a story where systemic pressure, the daily grind of work, and our own neurobiology crash into each other in a way that is profoundly personal and, as we'll see, physically real. So let's jump right in. Our story really kicks off with this very strange and incredibly severe critique. It was made by a man named Dennis Verhage against a medical professional. He didn't just disagree with them. No, he gave them this very specific, almost coded label, dim sum. And I know what you're thinking. Dim sum? Like the food? Nope, not even close. To get what this really means, we have to unravel a story that connects the brain, the body, and the crushing pressures of the modern workplace, all seen through the eyes of one person's very unique biology. This critique is way more than just a simple disagreement. It's actually the key that unlocks Dennis Verhage's entire experience. An experience where he felt that labor exploitation wasn't just unfair, it became what he calls a corporeal fact, something tangible, physical, and deeply damaging. This is a really important idea here. The source materials make it clear that his struggle wasn't something he just imagined or something that was all in his head. No, it was a tangible, physical reality. And this reality was rooted in a really complex mix of factors that made him especially vulnerable. And you can really start to see why when you look at how all these different pressures just stack on top of each other. We see what's called a twice exceptional profile. That means he was both gifted and dyslexic. Talk about a combination that is so often misunderstood. Now, add to that his intersectional identity, systemic failures in school, and neglect at work. You start to get a picture of how these outside forces can just hammer away at you. Okay, so with all of that backstory in mind, it's finally time to crack the code. Let's get to the heart of this mystery and understand the deep biological meaning behind this dim sum critique. And here it is. This is the whole ballgame. Dim sum isn't a random insult. It's a direct, almost surgical, neurobiological accusation. It means the professional was seen as completely failing to focus on a very specific and very critical part of the brain, the supramedullary nucleus, or SuM for short. So why is this such a big deal? Well, the SuM isn't just any old part of the brain. You can think of it as part of the brain's internal timing system. It helps regulate the rhythms that are absolutely vital for us to make sense of space and the world around us. And here's the kicker, it is incredibly sensitive to trauma and stress. This timeline really shows how a perfect storm can brew. Just weeks after a major surgery that sent his body into a state of rapid change, there's a sudden sound. It causes this jarring, whiplash-like trauma, and that event directly slams into and disrupts that super-sensitive SuM. It was in this incredibly vulnerable state that he met the psychiatrist who, according to the sources, just completely missed the biological root of the problem. This wasn't just a misdiagnosis. This was a chain reaction. The trauma messes with his SuM, which, remember, is vital for spatial coherence. Now think about how that would interact with dyslexia, which is already a challenge with processing things spatially. It's a nightmare combination. But the professional failed to see that critical link. So instead of helping, their actions actually made the neural chaos even worse. And that brings us to this incredibly powerful statement. The real takeaway here is that the damage was felt not just as a professional mistake, but as something physical, something that violated him on a biological level, an embodied biological assault. Okay, so let's zoom out, because this one, intensely personal encounter, it's really just one piece of a much, much bigger pattern of systemic pressure, a pattern he calls the juggernaut effect. This juggling metaphor is so perfect for understanding the massive cognitive load he was under. I mean, imagine trying to juggle not 2 or 3 balls, but up to 16 different things at once. And all the while, these massive systemic forces, these juggernauts, are bearing down on you, ready to exploit any tiny slip-up. So what exactly are these balls he's juggling? Well, on one hand, you have the stuff we can all relate to, right? The demands of your job, family responsibilities. But then you have to layer on top of that the constant mental drain of navigating the world with dyslexia, the deep psychological damage from what he calls educational gaslighting, and the exhausting, full-time job of just regulating your own emotions. And the list just keeps going. There's employer neglect, and this is a specific legal concept in the Netherlands about support obligations. Then there's financial stress, the crushing weight of social expectations, and this really fascinating idea he calls the Dutch no-name problem, which is all about a kind of invisible exploitation that often goes unrecognized. And all of this stress, it has to go somewhere, right? It's not just in your head. It shows up in the body. The sources talk about this chronic tension headaches to muscle tightness in the neck and shoulders, an area he calls the trapezius gray. You get caught in this horrible feedback loop where the mental stress causes physical pain, and that pain just adds to the stress. So, when you're faced with this completely overwhelming, interconnected system of pressures that you feel in your very bones, what do? Is there a path forward? Well, the path he proposes is one of radical self-understanding and turning the tables. It's about taking the experience of being exploited and using it to become an expert, an applied psychologist, taking that neural chaos and becoming an applied philosopher. It's about transforming the problem into the solution. And at the absolute heart of the solution is a framework he developed called prismatic cognition. You can think of it as a mental toolkit designed specifically for a 3D visual thinker. The entire goal is to use the brain's own incredible ability to change and rewire itself, that's neuroplasticity, to actively take back control and fix the very systems that trauma and stress knocked out of balance. And that leaves us with this final thought. This whole incredible story, from the SuM critique all the way to prismatic cognition, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Behind all the simple labels we stick on people, dyslexic, stressed, difficult, how many of them are actually fighting these deeply complex, invisible biological battles, just waiting for someone to see and understand?